Hey everybody, how you doing today? So here we are, episode 2, podcast 2. I don't know what else is cool about 2, player 2. So, how you doing, brother?
Doing swell.
Excellent. So, we're gonna try and buffer everything up here, make it a little bit cooler, and I don't know, try to be more entertaining.
We're not entertaining.
No, we're not. We're kind of lame, if you haven't been able to tell already. So, I just kind of wanted to start the show off by just asking, what have you been playing lately, man?
Currently, in the PS3, I have Persona Ultimax, because, of course, big-time Persona fan, so it's a game I've been anxious to play. And so I immediately had to pick that up. Right now for PS4, don't really have anything I'm playing through. Just finished Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes. That was awesome. Took me 3 hours, and my score was really shitty.
Dude, I think we all are on that first run, because there's no doubt that the enemies in that have a much further sight than classic Metal Gear games.
There was a lot of surprise. I think that it was kind of cool that you could tag your enemies in it, so that way you could see where they are. But simple fact of the matter is that binoculars do not go through buildings. So there was times where I was thinking I was being sneaky going around a building, and all of a sudden I'm just run right into a guard. And of course, any Metal Gear Solid fan knows what happens when you do that. So I was gunned down quite a few times.
I do like that the new Metal Gear games have that little span of time there where if a guard sees you, you have 3 seconds or whatever that you can quick shoot them or do something to get out of it. Unfortunately, that is the only way you can get out of it is by shooting him in the head, and that counts against your score.
It reminded me of Max Payne when you had the bullet time. You slowed everything down, and it was just okay, this gives me a quick, brief moment to assess what's going on. And most of the times, because of the fact that it's a Metal Gear game, rather than thinking clearly I should go and take cover, try to knock this guard out and go hide, you're just jumbling all the buttons at once, and you're like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. It's such an intense game, and even though people say, it's only a really short, game, it's just well, yeah, but
any real fan knows that it's a prequel.
I thought it was a really, really good stand, but to be honest, maybe $30 is a bit much for it because of the fact that there wasn't too much story content in there, if you ask me. I really think that maybe $20 would have been a more fair price.
I agree. Right out of the gates, if it were a little bit cheaper, that would probably encourage people to pick it up. Now that it has been out, though, for a while, I would imagine you can pick it up used for a pretty reasonable price. And by all means, you get to check out the Fox engine, and wow, that sucker's amazing. So, outside of those games, have you been playing anything on the Vita?
Surprisingly, I have not really been playing my Vita. I had finished Persona Golden on there, just trying to get a couple of trophies, and played a few of the PS Plus freebies, but it's just nothing has been really sticking out to me a whole lot. I love the Vita, but at the same time, because of the fact that I have my own TV and a PS3 and PS4, it makes it really hard to want to play on a handheld system over console. Right. When you're sitting in your room, you're like, do I want to have the luxury of kicking back and looking at a big screen and play my games, or do I want to stare at this little handheld screen?
Yeah, I know all too well what you mean. And what I do is I keep my Vita next to my bed, so that way if I'm laying in bed, I can actually play on it then. But I have no big titles that I've been playing on it. In fact, I've been working through one particular game for months, and it's Treasures of Montezuma Blitz. And it's funny because the game itself is something that I normally wouldn't get into because it's the I can't think of what style. Like,
Isn't it like a Candy Crush game?
Yeah, pretty much. And I have all the trophies in the game except one, and it's just gnaws at me because I want that to be 100% complete, but the trophy's for 100 hours of playing this game, which is absolutely excessive. But
you're gonna get through that and then delete it and never look back again.
Oh no. Other than that, I've kind of played Dragon's Crown a little bit, but it hasn't really latched onto me. I didn't really care for it. I know you liked it a lot, but I guess maybe that would be something I'd rather play as a multiplayer.
Dragon's Crown, I think, is one of those games where it gives you the nice touch of old school gaming with walking across the screen, Golden Axe type of feel where you pick out your class of character and beat everything up and get the experience points. You have the narrator telling you the story, and he sounds a little bit goofy, but yeah, I think the game was pretty good. It was rather short, but yeah, multiplayer on that is a lot better than solo player. But I think a lot of games, they can really benefit with multiplayer. That's definitely one of them.
Right. Other than that, I haven't really played any games on the PS3 as of late because I have been so busy playing on the PS4.
Yeah.
I picked up Diablo 3 Ultimate Evil Edition after playing it on the PS3 and getting the plat. I am a huge fan of the series, so I picked it up for the PS4 because I knew they had the new act and the Crusader, a couple other things. And I tell you what, man, even with playing through the first one so much, it has a special dose of crack on it because I had no issues replaying the entire game and getting all the trophies for that game as well. And if you know how intense it can be sometimes in that game, right. I had to level, was it 6 characters to level 70 for one of the trophies, and I loved it.
Right. But I think that goes to, like, you know, it's not a matter of doing it for the trophy. You're doing it because you want to. Then having that trophy go along with it's just kind of like the extra bonus, you know?
Absolutely.
So it's kind of like all the people that said they beat Emerald and Ruby Weapon, and you're just like, oh, okay. So, you know, it's like you go off their words. It's just like that kid in school that would sit there and tell you that they beat all of Ninja Gaiden, and you're just like, what?
Yeah.
Somebody actually did that? You know, at least with the trophy system, you kind of have proof of a person's gameplay, and that's one reason why I really like it. I like being able to show off that I did complete certain games, certain challenges, and have something to prove it, you know, as opposed to, oh yeah, like I totally dodged Sephiroth's sword and Eris lived, you know, and it's like, what?
Right. Yeah, and there's some games where you have those trophies that are just so hard. Like, you would know that with Diablo 3, with the new one of the trophies was to get to level 70 on hardcore mode. That was a tough one. But other than that, I have been playing Destiny like I'm sure millions and millions of other people.
Yep.
And I plan on picking up the WWE 2K15 here in, like, was it 3 weeks for the PS4?
Oh, no. I'm not okay with this, brother. Hello? Brother?
Pikachu!
Well, that was weird. We seem to have had some kind of technical difficulty with that last little bit. Apparently, my AT&T decided to be stupid and disconnect right after I had mentioned that I'm getting WWE 2K15 in a few weeks.
Maybe they're Cena fans.
Well, there's nothing I will be able to do about it because I can't see them. But otherwise, yeah, like, as far as games, man, like, I haven't really been playing anything outside of really my PS4. And it's awesome. I love that I'm really getting time on that system.
Right. I think that within the next year, we're going to definitely see a huge spike in the games that are coming out. Already, right off the bat, I know that there's a bunch of shooter games that have different people with mixed opinions, but it can't be denied that the shooter genre is definitely here to stay. It's not going to be like Rock Band or Guitar Hero where it's only going to be for like 3 years. It's definitely going to be around, and it's going to be a really strong genre. But I think that rather than dismissing all these shooter games like, oh, it's just another shooter, I think a lot of people are denying themselves a really fun experience. I played, well, you played it with me, Payday.
Yep.
Playing Payday 2 on multiplayer was, even though we were able to go through the stages, I think that was some of the most fun I've had on multiplayer games in a long time. Just sitting there and being able to, speak to the other person about trying to sneak in, and all of a sudden the alarms go off and you're yelling at the other person. You're like, why did you do that? And I didn't do anything. It's like, ugh. And all of a sudden we're both having to shoot and make our way to the van and steal stuff. I thought that was
we're almost dying.
Exactly.
Now, that's actually, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I do think that to some extent people are starting to get a little weary when it comes to these first-person shooters. Not that it's a dying breed by any stretch of the imagination, but I feel like people want to see something different, you know? And the fact that you mentioned Payday is perfect, because you and I both agreed that, yes, it is a first-person shooter. However, it's just different. And that game, yeah, was so much fun to play. And there's other games like Borderlands that have that nice comedic feel to it. And BioShock had the storyline that just took you for a ride. And even Destiny, it's got a lot of people grasped. And
what I think is good with Destiny is I did love when I played the alpha, I did love it. The beta, though, was kind of what started to make me realize it was probably not going to be my type of game. When I realized that I had put in the time to get the levels, but I had no interest to keep playing. Like, I hit level 8 and I was just like, I really don't care to keep playing this. And the more I thought about it, it's like, I don't see this being my type of game, because overall I'm going to have to maybe get involved with player versus player if I want a full experience. And I didn't like the concept that I'd probably have to be online all the time, which is the case. A lot of times, I'll see posts on Facebook or on other websites. Servers are down and nobody can touch the game. And frankly, I'm just one of those people that if I'm gonna play on my console, on my PS3 or PS4, I want to play a game. I don't want to be told that, oh, the servers are down, you can't play it.
Well, especially after dumping $60-$70 on the game.
Right.
And I can definitely feel that. And so far, my reaction to the game has been that I do like it. However, I have not seen where it's Game of the Year quality, which may get me bullet holes from multiple directions, but
You'll get from Bry.
yeah, but I just, and hopefully I see some more story, some more fun stuff, more memorable parts later in the game.
I will be perfectly honest. One of the things that I had thought about with Destiny was the fact that I've seen so many posts talking about the loot. That's the big thing that's always talked about. And I've seen people talking about everything else with the game other than a story. So it started to make me wonder, like, what is the story to Destiny? And I don't think I've gotten a clear answer yet.
That is the one thing that does perplex most people, and the grimoires that you acquire in the game, that's how you really get the backstory, by going on Bungie and looking into it. And that is cool. I like that they kind of integrate. However, some of us really don't want to go the extra mile, and they want the story right then and there. And
well, think about it like this. How many times have you purchased a game and you get home and you put it in and it's suddenly prompting that, oh, if you go to this website and create an account, you can unlock special features for this game.
oh, all the time.
It's just, why am I having to do this? I don't want to go to a website that I'll never go to again just to make an account for which it won't matter. I'll just make it something that's part of the game download.
Correct. And I see this could lead to a very long DLC.
Well, DLC is something that I know so many people are against it, but personally, I am all for it. I think that DLC is a brilliant idea to expand a game's life, and I think that quite often it is seen in a negative view. A lot of people, they will view VL or DLC and they'll immediately write off, why isn't this part of the game? And simple fact of the matter is they release games because of certain schedules, because of what's coming out or what's best for them, what's best for business. But they'll release a game and then they might have further ideas down the line, or they sit there and they might have the game already, so to speak, in production. Just because they say the game is done and it's released on a Tuesday doesn't mean that the game was totally completely finished by Friday and then they threw it into a copy machine and printed it out for everybody on Tuesday. That's not how it works.
No.
They finish a game and then it goes off to get printed for multiple copies. In the meantime, you might have that random guy, that random Fred who's like, hey guys, why don't we just have this in the game? And they're like, oh, hey, that's a good idea. All of a sudden that's a DLC idea. And at that point the game's not released, but they have DLC ideas. And of course it hits news sites and everybody starts spazzing that, why isn't this part of the game? Well, it was an idea that came to Fred just as the game was being printed. They can't change that. And at that point it's like, well, we have this DLC idea that goes with the universe, but it doesn't. For instance, I think Borderlands is a perfect example for this one. Borderlands has its storyline, which you've already played through it. I'm sure plenty of our listeners have already played through it. But once you complete through the game, the DLC is additional story that talks about some of the characters and content from the main storyline, but is not directly tied into it. There's no way that you can sit there and play the vanilla game and just all of a sudden, hey, Mr. Turk, you got missions for me to do? Oh, hey there! You know, all of a sudden you're doing stuff on the Yeah, it just doesn't work that way.
No. And I do completely agree that I do like DLC. Now, games like, and I keep going back to this game, BioShock Infinite. We both agree that the vanilla game can be completed, and it's a great story. We all know that.
Right.
The DLC that they added, especially the last 2 DLCs, were phenomenal. They gave you a ton of extra story that you love to see. It didn't need to be there, and I love that kind of DLC. Games that have been out for a little while and they're putting out more content for you to play that game more. All for it. The only time that I ever have any issues with it is when you have this game that you know is still in production and they are already talking about the DLC, and it's stuff that is minuscule enough, like for example, Final Fantasy 13 Lightning Returns. We knew so early on about Cloud's outfit. Now, instead of just adding it to the game right from the get-go, like, oh, no, you have to pay for this, and it's like...
I can see where you're coming from. Basically, like months in advance before the game is definitely sent out for production, it's already announced in DLC. Basically, like, announcing the game, but right after the game announcement, it's like, hey, DLC too.
Exactly. And at that point, yes, you don't need to buy it. It's your choice. But
Right.
it's almost that extra cash cow. Like, well, you could spend $60 on this game, or you could spend $75 and then you get this DLC package. And most people are going to be like, well, $15 extra. What's $15 extra? And you add that all together.
Yeah.
So that's the only time I'm ever not a fan of it. But
The one thing I will say that kind of annoys me with DLC, I can kind of understand, like, you know, characters, you know, additional characters. That's kind of cool if it was thought of later on. I kind of miss the concept of playing through a fighting game, or even just any game for that matter, and all of a sudden things unlocked, and it's like, bam, all of a sudden you got these additional characters. Like, if you're to beat Borderlands, all of a sudden you can play as Lilith. I'd be like, whoa. You know, that'd be awesome.
you can play as Moxie.
Yeah, that definitely be incentives to sit there and play through the game, and it's a lot more rewarding than just, you know, beat the game. But I think Capcom is the worst one for this, but I really do not agree to charge people 99 cents or $1.99 for color swaps. It's all it is a change of color. It can't be that hard to put into the game, and it should just be something that's, oh, download this update and you can change the colors of your outfit. You shouldn't have to pay $1.99 for that.
Yeah, I feel like they could make a patch for as many of the characters that are in the game at the time to have the change in colors of 2 outfits, we'll say, for each character. It can't be that hard to write that code for a patch.
If If it was something like, oh, you can have a change of outfits, I can kind of understand that, but even games like Dead or Alive, they so heavily milk that, and it does get its money's worth. There's a lot of people that sit there and do go off to buy those different outfits because
They're pervy and you want to see boobs bounce.
but there's no denying it. Dead or Alive definitely has its fan group, and you sit there and you have outfits, 1 month where it's just like, oh, these are cat outfits, and you got, a whole million people are like, oh my god, girls and with cat ears, I gotta get this.
Right.
But then you're gonna have like 3 million guys are like, whatever, that's just stupid. But then all of a sudden the next month it's like, well, now we got French maid outfits, and then you got like, this other million guys like, now that I have to get.
Right. Have
So-
them in their bikinis, and all the guys are buying it.
But DLC is one of those things that I will defend because I understand the concept of a lot of it, except for if it's color swaps. And it's to the point now where, interestingly enough, over the years, you've always heard like Nintendo fans saying how Sony and Microsoft are stupid because they have DLC, and Nintendo games will never go that route. But Nintendo is going that route now. Even Hyrule Warriors right now, they have the core vanilla game released, and they're already talking about releasing DLC and season passes. And I think it's a little bit ironic and funny just because it's like, hey, you guys were making fun of Sony and Microsoft for this, but now you're all jumping for joy over DLC. It's like, you can't sit there and make fun of one system for having DLC, but then when your system starts to get it, you'd be like, oh yay, it's awesome.
Right. And speaking of which, I was gonna ask you, and hopefully we have some people that kind of give their feedback on this, because I do feel that it is a huge topic, and based on some of the friends that we talked to, I would like to assume most of us play Sony PlayStation. I mean, most of us have PS3s, a few of us have PS4s, and I do believe that none of us, none of the friends that we have an Xbox One, and a couple of us have the Wii U. Now, when it comes to those systems, I'm kind of curious, what about those systems, why haven't you purchased any of them? Or, is there something about those systems that you are not particularly a fan of?
What's one of the funny things I was thinking about today with that was that this previous gen of consoles, pretty much everybody had a Wii. I don't think there was very many people that did not have a Wii, but pretty much everybody had that, and it was either 360 or a PS3. But even with like yourself and myself, we both temporarily had a 360, and even I believe Ryan had
That is correct.
360. Bry, I think he had a PS3, but I don't know if he had a 360. But I know that a lot of people did try the 360, and I personally, when I played it, there was a couple games that I bought the 360 for to try them out. I wanted to play Fable, Left 4 Dead, Onechanbra, and I can't really remember too many other games. But the reason that I didn't go the Xbox route is simply because of the fact that overall the networks between all three of them, Sony I think has the network down, where they have the old school games and modern games, and it's not like Nintendo's where they had the virtual store for Wii and then all of a sudden they changed it, and that makes no sense to me. And I want to be able to access one store that's universal for all my systems.
That would be
and-
awesome.
And one thing that I really like with PlayStation that has been with them for a while is, of course, the PlayStation Plus, which, Xbox, they now have the one free game with gold. But if you don't have gold, then you can't watch Netflix. And I was really bothered by that with the 360. So it's like, okay, how do I know I won't have that same issue with Xbox One? And overall, I don't like the Xbox controller. I know it's blasphemy all over the internet, but I grew up playing PlayStation, and so the controllers handle perfectly for me. I feel so foreign holding a 360 controller. I'm like that old dude that's trying to play Nintendo games, constantly looking down at the controller. Which button is what?
I know all too well. And I would agree completely, actually, with the 360. I will admit, I did like the system. I do like the controllers more than the original, building-sized Xbox controllers. And I do believe that between you and I probably had more experience on an Xbox.
You did.
And I originally got a 360 because I was really big into Halo, and I had a friend who actually modded my system for me, and that way I could get like Left 4 Dead and all sorts of cool games. And I do like Xbox, but at the end of the day, I'm in the same boat. I do prefer a Sony controller in my hands. That's very natural feel to me, and ultimately the reason why I did pick a PS4 over Xbox One. And as far as a Wii, well, yeah,
I'd touch on that next.
I did have the Wii like millions and millions of other people, and I liked the system, but at the same time, the idea of the Wii, I think, is what sold it to so many people. Like, oh, you are like getting up and you're moving and all that. That's what sold it, and it's great for senior citizen homes and stuff like that. I commend Nintendo for being so ahead of its time with doing something like that. However, they didn't have the games, I felt, to really kind of back it up and to hold the interest. As far as the Wii U, however, I do plan on getting one eventually. At the end of the day, am still a huge fan of Mario games and Legend of Zelda. Those are games that we grew up playing and will forever be a part of me. However, I can't justify the price of the system at this time, and I don't mind having to wait 2-3 years to pick up a used Wii U and the Super Mario games. I don't think I'd pick up Hyrule Warriors. I played enough Dynasty Warriors that I just kind of got bored of the genre. And so I'm going to hold off a little bit, and I know I'll pick one up eventually, just not yet.
Well, my thoughts on Wii U are, okay, right off the bat, straight up, I don't hate any of them. I have a bit of respect because each system does have a fan base of gamers, and at the end of the day, somebody playing a different game than me, whatever, they're still gamers, so it's kind of cool.
Except for the PC bastards, they get annoying.
But for Wii U, I definitely think I will get one later on once the price is dropped. The only thing is that I won't get the Mario type of games like you had mentioned. One of the reasons being is that I don't agree with Nintendo's pricing. Even if you wait 5 years to get that Wii U, the price for the hardware might go down, but those Mario games are still going to cost you like $49, $59 because Nintendo does not like its prices for its games to go down. So I think that's like one of the annoying points with Nintendo. I understand that they don't want lower prices on their games because they feel as though it puts a bad image on their game. One of the things that they have said was that, you know, you go into a store and you see a game that's $59.99, you're going to assume that either A, it's brand new, or B, it's a really, really good game. But then you'll see a game that's, you know, it's $5.99 or $7.99, and you're going to immediately be like, that game must be worse than this one. Because that means that there's more copies of this game in their stock versus this $59 game. So Nintendo doesn't want that image. So unfortunately, if you go in to try to buy Skyward Sword still, it's something like $39. It's ridiculous. And it's like, why is this still so expensive? It should be dirt cheap now.
Now, do you think that that is actually affecting overall sales for Nintendo?
I think my idea and belief with Nintendo and their sales is that they had a really bad naming structure with the Wii U because it threw off so many people. And I don't even recall Nintendo talking about Wii U. I remember them talking about, I remember Microsoft talking about Xbox One. I remember Sony talking about PS4. I don't remember Wii U being talked about anywhere. And all of a sudden, it's the same thing with recently, the new 3DS. That's the name of it, new 3DS. It's like, how are you going to market that? This is the new 3DS? It makes no sense to me. Just, if it's a whole new system with all different hardware, give it a different name that's not really tied in with the original. Game Boy Advance and Game Boy SP, or Game Boy Advance SP. You knew that they were related. They would take the same cartridges, but if I said Game Boy Advance versus Game Boy, you would know the difference between the two.
Right. And the problem that Nintendo has as well is that I feel like they are relying too much, though, on some of these titles.
Unfortunately, Nintendo, it's not so much like they rely on it, they're just not getting the third-party support because of the fact that Nintendo, over the years, has built this image to themselves of being the lesser guy, to be the more family-friendly system. And so a lot of these third-party companies, you got Capcom, who's wanting to make Resident Evil games and all these other violent type of games, and you got Square Enix that wants to make these glorified RPGs, and all these other companies, I just right off the top of my head, that they want to make a more serious type of game, but then it's like they look at Wii U and it just doesn't fall into that, like, that category of gamer. Like, if you look at the general audience for Wii U owners, they're not going to be the types of people that sit there and have Skyrim and will tell you, oh my god, I'd rather play Skyrim over any Zelda game. You know, they're definitely the crowd that they will tell you Zelda every day, all day, any day. And that's cool. That's their thing. But I'm just saying that other companies realize this, and it's like, why should we even bother?
But do you think that it is going to, in the end, bite Nintendo in the ass, and that they, to survive, would have to branch out? Because I feel like with them going the route that they are, that down the line, they're going to have to maybe sell the rights on And Mario would be the last thing that they'd want to sell, but maybe branching Link off to another series, or even like Pokemon, something to help boost that revenue.
Well, the problem is that right off the bat, you're naming Mario, Zelda, and Pokemon, which are all big titles for Nintendo. They've had the rights on them forever. What Nintendo needs is other third-based games to be released for it, and they need to kind of start to show that they can be a more mature system. But I think that hole has been dug really deep for Nintendo at this point, where they have all these Pokemon games, and it's like, what system is that for? And people will be like, oh, it's for Nintendo. And so a lot of people are like, oh, so Nintendo has these little pocket monster things, and Sony and Microsoft have Destiny, Resident Evil, and Halo. Which one are we gonna go off to play?
Right. It makes you think that Nintendo really has given up on the console war, and just kind of like, oh, well, we're gonna do our thing while you guys do yours, and kind of make a completely different style of gaming.
Nintendo has definitely stayed kind of to the side, which has been good for them, but at the same time, I don't know if ignoring, so to speak, what's going on with the other systems is such a great idea. Nintendo, I have a firm belief that they can somehow get their act together, but they need to do so much. They definitely have the handheld stuff down. They have that nailed. They've had that nailed for years.
Right.
But they need to improve the virtual network, start providing more games on there. I would definitely love to see a lot more old school games on my 3DS, so that way I can sit there and play random NES or Super NES games on the go. But at the same time, I really do not agree to the pricing scale that a Super Nintendo game will cost me $5.99 to $7.99, whereas I can buy like Xenogears for the PS1 on the PlayStation Network for just about the same price.
I believe it's $9.99.
What other things are $9.99?
PlayStation Network? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's some amazing things out there for $9.99.
Well, we don't have Triple H as a guest, so unfortunately, you will not be able to tell everybody about the WWE app.
What's that? The WWE app?
See, we should get paid now for advertisement.
You're welcome, Hunter. When this show is like being played by millions and millions, there's going to be somebody out there for sure going, WWE app is only $9.99. That's a steal. All those classic matches that you can now watch. All the pay-per-views ever.
Exactly.
But yeah,
I do want a Wii U, but it's not for Mario, it's not for Zelda. It's because I know there's going to be the Shin Megami versus Fire Emblem game. There hasn't been any news on it forever, but I know it's still in the making, so I'd like to get that. I do want to play the Fatal Frame game, and of course I do want to play Bayonetta 2, and I know that there will be a Metroid game at some point. I was looking at the sales for Bayonetta 2 in Japan, and unfortunately they're not doing so hot, and of course Nintendo is a little bit confused as to why the sales are worse than the first one for a game that so many people were all excited for. And it's like, you guys have to realize that people were excited for the game because they thought it was going to be coming for PS3 and 360 at least. But then all of a sudden it's for Wii U, a system that is, again, family friendly. And if anybody's played Bayonetta, they know that Bayonetta is not a family friendly game.
No, not at all.
So that's a game that it really should have. I mean, I know it's going to sound biased, and because I'm a fan of the first one, and I'm definitely going to sound biased, but it really should have been on PlayStation and Microsoft, or PlayStation and Xbox. It's just because of the content of the game. And I know I mentioned earlier that the Wii U needs to move in a more mature direction, but I think that one point you're playing a Mario game and you see Hyrule Warriors, and next thing you know you have Bayonetta's latex butt in your face, and it's like, whoa, hey, what just happened? You know, it's quite a different game from the other ones, and I think that's the reason why it's not doing so hot. It's definitely a game I want to get, but it's not
Enough to go buy a system.
So, worst comes to worst, I might just sit there and pick it up around Christmas time when I start having more money and just play it out in the living room with Kiki. I'll get my kick in with Bayonetta, and maybe I'll just avoid having to buy a Wii U entirely.
Just steal his. Effectively steal his. But yeah, no, that's cool, man. Like, I agree that the Wii is a promising system because of the fact that there are games that are cool, but they do need to do some work on it. Make it a little bit more accessible for different types of gamers, and maybe consider the idea of letting some more third parties come in and try to do some magic on there, because that is a beautiful system. I mean, seeing some of the Mario games on there, just the backgrounds on there are so lush in color, and I really think it's a beautiful system. I just want to see something happen to it.
Well, what they need is also games with a lot more depth. If you think back to Super Nintendo, there's quite a few games that you can name off that weren't just hop platforming type of stuff. And with Wii U, it's you sit there and you try to think about what games have came out for it that have a lot more depth to it, and kind of draw a blank there.
Right. Now, is there anything that you could think of that maybe Sony needs to work on? Is there anything about the PS4 that you actually dislike? Or, well, Sony as a whole?
The one and only thing I hate with PS4, as of this moment, is just that there's the PSN gap from PS3 to PS4. And I know that because it's still relatively new and they're still trying to work out many different things, but I really wish I could pull up different orders I've had from the PlayStation Store on my PS4. And I honestly feel as though that a person should be able to sit there and pull up their store list. And let's say you have Red Dead Redemption or some other PS Plus game that you had downloaded that, and it's a PS3 game. I don't understand why you cannot download that on the PS4 and play it, whereas you can use the PS Now and play it through that. And I don't like that.
That was, now that you mention, the one thing that I am not a fan of, and I was so excited for PlayStation Now. I love the idea of it, but the only thing is seeing the pricing on it. It just bothers me to no end because of the fact that I feel like if you're gonna rent a game, it should only be a couple bucks. Where they have just these prices. It's like they pull them out of a hat.
Oh yeah, those prices threw me off. way bad. It was absolutely ridiculous. You should not be asking for $3.90 or $2.99 just for 4 hours. Like,
Especially when it's an indie title that, if you were to go on the store, it might only cost you $10 to $15. You know, if they're gonna charge you anything, be like, well, how about $1 for 2 days? Because then you might be a little bit more like, okay, well, I can give it a shot, and if I like it, then you can buy it.
I think they have the right ideas, but the pricing scale, I know that they said that they were kind of working with developers on that one. I just don't think it's fair to sit there and charge somebody as much as $15 to $25 for a 90-day rental. And it's like, why don't I just go up to GameStop, pay them $6, and I can buy the game? They can't give a really good answer for that.
It would be cooler, I guess, then if they had a pay to own. So we'll say Octodad, just pulling the game out, where the game itself costs $15 on the PlayStation Network, and what they did was, okay, well, it's $3 for 2 days, and then after that 2 days, you could go back and, I don't know, say a week later, pay $3, but then instead of it just being, oh, okay, well, it would say, okay, well, this person's paid $6, and then finally you could just go on there and pay $9, and then, oh, okay, well, here, you can have the whole game.
That actually brings up one thing that I had thought about, that I really wish Sony, as well as probably Microsoft, since I don't play 360 or Xbox One, I really can't say it for sure as to how they have their models, but I really think that there needs to be a staff at Sony that goes through their network and says, hey, this game has been out for 6 years. Why is the DLC still $20 and the game itself is only $3?
Right.
Because that's definitely one thing with DLC that it bothers me, because DLC never goes on sale.
And I feel like if they did reduce the price on DLC, people would be more willing. It's kind of like the PlayStation All Stars recently was on for PlayStation Plus. You were able to get the game and the code to go online. Well, the problem is the DLC in that game, even though the game is dated, is still, I think it was like $10 to $15. I could be very wrong, and all it was a new level, and I think it was another character. And if somebody really wanted to make some bucks on it, they could have dropped the price on it to say $2, $3. Yeah, is it gonna affect their sales? I mean, probably, but I think more people would be willing to pay that. Instead of, you say 100 people go into that, and there might be 5 people would say, oh, well, you know, I really want to get this trophy, this platinum, so they'll pay it. And all the other people are like, well, screw that, I don't want to pay that much for a DLC for just that. Whereas if you had it dropped, there might be, we'll say 40 people who would say, you know what, okay, yeah, I'll get the DLC, why not, I have the whole game.
I do not agree to the fact that there's so many games that, like, I have, and I look up the DLC for it, and it'll be a game that's been out for a few years, and the DLC is still practically the same price as it probably was the day it was first posted on there. And I think that's just absolutely ridiculous. You shouldn't be sitting there and charging. I know that a lot of these companies like Capcom they'll feel as though that our Resident Evil 6 downloads and DLC are worth that much, and it's like, well, maybe to you guys, because you might have all of these extra dollars just sitting around in your bathtub. But for me, I have a vanilla version of Resident Evil 6, and I turn around and there's like Game of the Year editions coming out, and it's like, okay, so the people that bought the game on day one get screwed over versus the people that waited 4 years and now they get the game for $29, all DLC. And if I want the DLC, I'm having to pay $39 practically, you know?
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense at all.
No, it's certainly a lot of crap with the pricing systems in regards to the games versus DLC. I know that Game of the Year are really hard to, put into perspective because of the fact that in some cases you don't know if there is going to be a Game of the Year edition. With Borderlands, for instance, that there's going to be a Game of the Year edition, but do you really want to wait that long to figure out if there is going to be one?
Oh no, that's a game that you want to get up and play it, because the experience of playing those games, that's something that they've got down to a T. The story is amazing. The comedy, just you can't beat Mr. Torque. There's no one I've ever met that disliked Mr. Torque.
One of the things that I was on PSN and I was looking at Resident Evil with Kiki. We had pulled up Operation Raccoon City because, of course, I'm still wanting you to get that game. And we had looked at it on PSN. I was like, maybe it's on here for super cheap. And they have it on there, but it's $49. And it's like,
Yikes.
what? You get that at GameStop for like $5. Why would you pay $49 for this game?
Now, do you think that would be something that Sony should ever consider? That some of these games that come out, a few years ago, if you go, you could buy it used, and they won't get any profit. Do you think that maybe they should drop prices on those to like a significant, I like the idea of digital games because of the fact that you can never lose them. You always are. It's always there. You can always download it. The collector in me loves having a disc and everything, but given the choice in that scenario, you could go, oh well, I could go get Raccoon City for a couple bucks at GameStop. But what if you had the option to say, oh, or I can pay 10 to 15, for example, and get the digital copy on the PSN right now, and then it's not going to be scratched and all that.
The only problem I have to that though is the fact that, okay, let's say you get both of them. Okay, the problem that I have with, even if they did drop the prices, is the fact that you're still essentially getting the same vanilla games for both of them. And so it's like, okay, well, one, I actually own it, and the other one is $6 more, but it's on my network. So then comes the other fun factors. The fact that with the digital copy, you have to download it. Now, for some people, that's no big deal. For others, that could be easily an hour and a half of waiting, at the very least.
And space.
That's what I was going to go on to next, is the fact that I have a 500 gig inside my PS3, but that sucker gets filled up. And I have to clear stuff constantly. And so if I was given the choice between the two, obviously I would go with the disc version, but also because of the fact that you can have all these downloads onto your system and everything else, but let's say you decide that, oh my god, there's a Diablo 4 collector's edition and I really want it, I'm pressed for money, I'm just going to sell some games. Well, you can't, because they're all digital. I think that's what really
Well, and
mean,
it also takes away from, back in the day, we all used to, we had friends that we would go to, like your friend Derek, and go, hey man, oh, you have this game. Dude, can we borrow it? That was the beauty of cartridges and discs. You can do that, whereas, yeah, with digital, that's the part that sucks. You can't, you have a friend who's curious about a game, they would have to come over and play it.
With like myself, Kiki was going through and asking about different games, and it's like, yeah, I have this, I have that, I have this, I have that. And he wants to play them, and it's like, oh, sorry, bro, it's all PS Plus.
Right. Right. And that's something else. I mean, I do love PS Plus because of that, but I do admit that there's a lot of those games that I technically purchase them. I do go to start the download and I just stop it. That way it's in my account, but it's not on my system, because there is a high probability most of those games I'll never touch. But if it is there, and that way if someone's like, oh, yeah, dude, you got to try this game. It was on PlayStation Plus, and be like, oh, okay.
Right.
But that doesn't happen often. So.
Well, I know with my PS Plus, I do the same thing. I download everything, regardless if it's going to be something I like or not. I download it, and one of the things that I do kind of like is that it does kind of give you an ability to check out different games that you probably wouldn't have. But at the same time, I feel as though that there's quite a bit of fodder, if you will,
Yeah.
that's put onto there just for
Space.
having something on there.
Yeah, I do feel like there's a lot of filler in there, and I will be the first to admit to anyone, I do like DLC. And I look forward to trying out new games by new companies. But for all the times that you do have the kick-ass PlayStation Plus games that go on the network, there are tons and tons of other games that go on there, and you're like, oh, yeah, I'm not really feeling this.
Well, case in point, I played all of the recent PS Plus games for PS4, and let's just be perfectly honest, they all sucked. I had played, I believe it's called Trine 2.
Yes.
I played that for probably an hour, and I started to develop one of the worst headaches I've had in a long time, because the whole use a barbarian, wizard, or archer to navigate through all these different puzzles and trying to remember which button did what and who can do what, it was a mess. And after an hour, I was like, I am never going to touch this game again.
I was the same way. I couldn't delete that game fast enough.
The next one I tried was Towerfall Ascension. That game, it uses like 8-bit graphics, 8 or 16. It's very pixelated.
Yeah.
And you pick between like your class, and then you're put into like this castle, and all of a sudden there's like an enemy that comes at you. You have no idea what's going on, how to attack. You're just there, and all of a sudden you're being chased by some other guy. And I had completed the first 2 areas, I think, and I was like, this is really stupid. I'm running in circles, and it's basically like a one-hit kill.
Right.
It's probably fun if you have a bunch of friends, but I could not play it very long, so I deleted that. There was Strider. Strider was a very pretty game in terms of, PSN game that was put onto there, but I think that game just lost its charm after the first level. You're just like, okay, so I'm running around looking for where to go, and there's all these dudes shooting at me. And
Right. I'll be
So,
honest, there's only been actually a couple games on there that, for PlayStation Plus, well, for PS4, there's only been a couple games that I've actually really liked.
Well,
And-
for PS Plus, I know that those 3 games in particular, I didn't care for. Even Strider, I was like, it's not as bad as the other ones, but it's not holding my attention, so I deleted that.
Right.
Then there's Velocity, which is I think it was just removed as of today. But Velocity, no, actually, it'll be removed next Tuesday. But Velocity is, it has like you flying around in a spaceship, and it's kind of like an overhead view, and you shoot lasers, and you kind of zip through mazes. So it's kind of fun, but the main part that I found was most interesting is the fact that you dock your spaceship at certain scenes, and all of a sudden it turns into like this pseudo Metroid type of game. You're running across these maps. It's like an alien zone, and you have to like slide under these different platforms, and you have to zip your way through walls, and it's very, very fun and very unique. My only gripe with the game is that it makes you feel as though this is kind of what a 2D modern day Metroid game would feel like, and because we don't have one, it's very saddening.
Right.
I
I was actually going to compare it to an old classic Blaster Master.
That's true. One of the things that I found a little bit funny with that game, and the fact that people have compared Metroid to it a few times, is the fact that the lead character is a female, and she wears like a blue bodysuit and has blonde hair. So it's just like, it does look a little bit suspicious, but
Come
I
on,
thought,
developers.
yeah, but I thought it was a fairly fun game. I'm still playing through it. I'm just not like rushing to play through it. But that was a PS Plus game for September. That was for Vita and PS4.
Right.
It's $15 on the PSN.
Yeah. Now, so far, what would you say is your favorite, though, for PS4, anyways, for the PlayStation Network?
What's my favorite game that's been downloaded because of PS Plus?
Yes.
I actually still have to play Outlast because I have that sitting on my system, but I know that's going to probably be a good 10-15 hour game. But if I had to say anything, I know it's going to be kind of weird because I know a lot of other people didn't like it, but I thought Contrast was really fun. I really liked the music, the scenario of the game, and I was really drawn into it. I think Dead Nation or Mercenary Kings are fun for a little bit on solo, but they require multiplayer for sure.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. No doubt, because I played Mercenary Kings for a while by myself, and yeah, that game can get pretty difficult. But I would say that for me, though, personally, my favorite games so far, well, my favorite game has been Stick It to the Man.
Yep.
That game is different in a good way. I like the kind of dark Tim Burton-ish feel that I had from the characters, and it was just kind of unique and had a kind of a goofy story. It's not hard to play, and like if you die, then it was like, okay, well, whatever, you just kind of resurrect, 3 seconds to where you were before. And
Yeah.
other than that, I played Resogun quite a bit.
I played that the first month I had PS4, but then I haven't really touched it since.
I haven't done much with it. I do like seeing some of the ship creators that people have done, because if you go on there, man, they've got like all sorts of cool little, like, someone made a black mage from the early Final Fantasy series, just Super Mario, all sorts of cool, nifty things that, man, how come I don't have that much talent and ability to make these kick-ass ships? You know, it's like seeing people play Minecraft and, you know, like, oh, I made a small little hut, and then you see them and they make King's Landing from Game of Thrones. It's like, dude, what the hell?
So, did you see my post for PS Plus next or this month?
I did, yes, and I was actually kind of I posted something a few days ago about an idea of.
That was way too good to be true.
I know. This list was amazing. It had Octodad, and I believe it had Gran Turismo 6.
Yeah, that's why I knew it was kind of suspicious. It had too many AAA titles on there.
We could only dream. But
I think it's pretty cool that we get Drive Club. I mean, that was one of the really hyped up games before PS4 was released. And even though it's not my type of general game, I'm still going to download it to give it a shot.
The only thing that I've heard anybody say that could be considered negative about that game is how big it is. I think I remember hearing 18 gigs.
I'll wait and see, but otherwise the other games was Dust, which it looks like a furry game.
Yeah.
I was only looking at screenshots, so I don't know what the gameplay is like, but I know Spelunky. That's an indie title that's supposed to be like Indiana Jones.
That's kind of what it looked like to me.
Then PS3 had Batman Arkham Asylum. I think we had Arkham City not too long ago.
Yep, and that's the one thing I thought was kind of cool. I'm like, oh, I'm effectively getting every Batman game on the PlayStation Plus.
Wasn't Asylum before City, though?
Yes, Asylum, I believe, was the first one.
Kind of weird that they released City and then Asylum rather than Asylum then City.
Someone was drunk.
And then then there's D&D Chronicles of Mystara, which is supposed to be a side-scroller beat 'em up.
That I've never seen. I don't know what to expect out of that.
It's basically going to be Golden Axe with a dash of Dragon's Crown.
Oh, okay.
And then Vita, there was Pix the Cat. I looked at only a picture of the game, and it doesn't look like one of the games I'll be playing, but I'll still download it. I wasn't too sure what was going on in the picture because it kind of looked like Pac-Man in a way.
Ooh, ouch.
Yeah, I might be completely wrong, and it might be like I was looking at something else, but I did realize that Googling Pix the Cat gives you pictures of cats.
Which isn't always, I guess, a bad thing.
No, but I was trying to find out about the game, and it's like, no, not pictures of cats. I'm looking for Pix the Cat.
If you look hard enough, you might find pictures of my starting to be obese cat. She's definitely getting quite large. But
And then the other game that's for Vita was Rainbow Moon. Have you looked up what that one is?
the only thing that I recall as far as Rainbow Moon is there are tons of stuff that you can download or buy for it on the PlayStation Network, like coins and whatnot. So that's about all I know about that.
Rainbow Moon is a strategy RPG. It has pretty big battles. My gripe with that is if I was maybe younger and less responsibilities in the world and more free time, strategy RPGs would be still fun. But I'm getting to that point now where it's like, I don't have, 200 hours to put into just grinding alone.
No, is this a game that's kind of along the lines of Final Fantasy Tactics or like that style of game?
I think Tactics was a league of its own. It had a really serious storyline, and it had like a lot more intensity to it than any other SRPG I've seen or played. I know a lot of people bring up Fire Emblem, but Fire Emblem, I've tried playing the new one for a few hours, and to me, it's not the same like intensity. Like, I don't feel as though shit's about to go down, like a huge war is about to go on. Instead, it's more or less like you're worried that, oh, derp and derp, like derp and derp, and it's like, what? And it's not that it's a bad thing, it's just that I kind of do miss the serious approach that was in Final Fantasy Tactics. And then, of course, there's Disgaea, which is all just goofy.
Yeah.
And there's a ton of games that are so similar to like that one. That's great and all. I do really love Disgaea, but like I said, I'm so hesitant on getting a new one because I know how many hours it takes to beat one.
Well, and there's an unfair advantage on Final Fantasy Tactics part, and the fact that we played that game probably combined several hundred hours. Going through and leveling up all of the individual classes, and once you got like Cloud in your team, you're like, oh, well, I gotta get all of his limit breaks, and it gets pretty crazy with leveling all those characters up all the way, and before you know it, you've put in 150 hours into the game on that playthrough.
Right.
So,
but I don't mind a long game. It's just SRPGs in particular, the fights can just go on too long. It's not a matter of go into a fight, hit X2 slash all, and walk away.
Right. I can't have that luxury in every game. So, I think we should probably think about going ahead and wrap this up here. It's probably one of the longer things I've ever done here on a computer. Oh, old bones.
Yeah, it's over an hour.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna listen to it.
No. If someone makes it this far, bro, you just got a platinum trophy.
Ding!
So, I hope that everyone enjoyed this and you can maybe relate. And if you did make it this far, go ahead and leave some comments on things that you would like to hear us talk about. Hopefully, we will be doing another one of these pretty soon here. And, it'd be cool to have some guests come on and talk with us and, just to kind of suggest what you would like to hear from us. So, I guess we will talk to you guys later.